Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's a session after lunch, and we all need energy, so that's why they make sure to start with the econometrics, one of the most interesting subject you ever heard. So, it's really get interesting when we will see how much importance, especially directly related to hundreds of millions of dollars people either can make or lose by using these forecasts. So I thought that'll be, keep you awake. So what I'm trying to do today, so it's just like, related to big data. So back probably 20, 30 years ago, the biggest challenge, how to collect data in order to use, especially in econometric modeling. And now I think we have we are on the other spectrum. So we have so much data, so much information, and how we can utilize in a way we can increase our understanding. And since I work for Wells Fargo here, how we can efficiently allocate our resources. So we are in research, and all our trader, we call trader who are directly involved in a money-making business, they utilize this number. And the focus here is short-term, like 1 month ahead. So what happened every week, a lot of data release, like today, industrial production release earlier. And later this week, we will receive inflation data, housing-related data, and then index of leading indicators. So these indicators play a very important role for the overall picture. And like right now, every data is important because people are want to know whether the Fed is going to raise rate or not. And that's the raising rate is directly affect anyone. I want to say in the world, but let's say definitely in the US for sure. And eventually it will affect. So, and these data point is very important to forecast the Fed likely move. So that's the bigger picture. And then the smaller picture, if this data, like say inflation, which released tomorrow, if it came in stronger than expected, so usually that's when the equity market will go down, because people will say, okay, Fed may raise rate, and they will try to invest in other sectors. And that's we are talking about at least hundreds of $millions. And if we accurately forecast, and that will help obviously those people to adjust their portfolio. So here we were a real-time mean, like again CPI. I already submit my forecast last Friday to Bloomberg, to Wall Street Journal, to New York Times, and it's also available on our web. So that's we predict in advance before the actual number. So that's how it's real time, and it's really useful for our, let's say, clients. And then we will compare with the Bloomberg consensus. So why with Bloomberg consensus? That's also important. So overall picture, again, we have a lot of information, how to utilize. And then we divide into 5 different subgroups. So the first one, why we really care about this short-term forecast. And then obviously how we can generate accurately using obviously econometric model. It was interesting when we will start looking at especially the empirical evidence. Back in 1980s, people found this. So it's not like a Nobel Prize, winning thought. So people know. Back inflation-related data was important. And now again, inflation and housing-related data. And the only thing is changed, not like just today, not just the U.S. data. Also, like if you are paying attention on market, last week a lot of volatility because Chinese data, economic data, came in weaker than expected, and we all know Brexit. So okay, Brexit and the And the key factor we can see, sterling is depreciated a lot. So it's a global environment. So what happened in U.S. is is affecting outside, and vice versa. And as people have empirical proof. So economy are evolving, and so the nature of risk as well as reward also change. So it's like if I use Hurricane Matthew, okay, it's happened. So what's important for us, it was before when we all trying to, okay, which is the path? So I was sending email to TMR, okay, are you guys still on schedule? Are you going to cancel? So they say, okay, so far so we good. So the point here, information we need in advance, and information is common, it's not that effective. So that's what exactly happening in economics world. If I use again the Brexit example, so that was important because all the polling was showing, okay, it's not going to happen. So what I'm trying to say, if the news is unexpected than what market is expecting, that create a lot of volatility. So that's important. So that also implies, so if we go to Bloomberg or any other economics data provider, they will give you consensus for the GDP, for the employment, or like Bloomberg is predicting roughly 65% chance of rate hike. So that means that's already priced in all the investment decision. So if Fed do not raise rate in December, so that will create a lot of volatility. So why is it important? So it's important if we really want to make a difference, we need our own framework. And that framework or econometric modeling or approach should be better than the consensus. Because if the information which is new in a way but is consistent with consensus, is not creating a lot of volatility or opportunities. So that's why our John Sylvie, our chief economist, so he said, okay, are you not trying to justify your job? So we need an econometrician. I said, no, not at all. So maybe you need econometrician to make a difference. So that's why we talk about this econometric modeling. So then, okay, we need a unique or different approach which should be better than at least the market consensus. So what kind of tool, econometric tool or statistical tool we are looking for? Again, things has changed. Now we have a lot more information. Even in economics, we have hundreds or thousands of variables. So the challenge is how we can utilize that information. So that means we need econometric models which are flexible and which allow to incorporate so much information. Especially because traditional methods have so many limitations to incorporate a number of variables. So that's our custom-built approach, and so the benefit of this approach, we have roughly right now probably 1,000 variables. For all who are using big data, 1,000 maybe nothing, but for economics, that's a lot. Just like maybe 20 years ago, it was hard to find probably 50 variables. So it's like, a lot more. And our framework basically give an opportunity to perform all of those variables as a predictor. And we can find handful of this predictor. So then again, how we will know? Okay, we have econometric tool and we have a lot of data, especially again data available freely. You go and they're ready to use. How we will finalize variable? So it's back to the objective. So usually we say, okay, we want close to actual. Okay, that's fine. But now again, what is important? Direction. So like today, industrial production data release, it was a positive. But if it's negative, that will create completely different reaction. Same tomorrow, if the inflation data came in stronger, so that means inflation is coming. So that's the key driver for FOMC. So what we are looking for, we want to close to actual, but also we want to predict the direction. Just like, again, back to, it's a little different, but in a way same, Hurricane Matthew, all what we are doing, we're trying to predict the path. Okay, we know, okay, it's fluctuating between Hurricane 3, Category 3 and 4, but also the direction. So which area could affect? So same thing in economics, is not only the magnitude, direction is very important as well. Again, we have seen, so usually, so one of the, for us, Employment Friday we call, every first Friday of the month, Bureau of Labor Statistics release employment-related data. And that's usually at 8:30, and market open, 9:30. So if you turn on your TV and Bloomberg or CNBC, they will show you the future of market. So sometime if the data is different, we will see market fluctuation over 100 points. So that's billions of dollars. So it's that important. And so usually, so why is it important? So if the employment data is stronger than expectation, so then S&P usually, or equity market go up. Main people are more optimistic. They will invest, they want to invest where the higher growth is. And then the opposite is the Treasury or bond market. So that's where they will pull out all the money and invest in riskier or higher growth. And if the data is weaker than expected, it will be opposite. And then it also affects the foreign exchange market. And again, if you are a good forecaster, on average at least, so you can help your people where they should invest. So that we want to consider in our forecast evaluation. Then the data. So there are at least for US, is probably 40 different variable release. And the first rule of thumb, we want to make sure what we are trying to forecast here. What functional form is compared to last month, is compared to last year, because that will help us to find or finalize our predictor. We have a large data set, and in this point, so when if summarize again what we are trying to forecast, like at Wells, we are forecast for next month. At the same time, we are trying to forecast for next 2 years. Obviously, this is a very difficult time because of election year. Both polities have a certain set of decision making about the fiscal and monetary policy, especially fiscal policy that will affect. But usually, we always do. So basically, when we finalize a method or model, our selection criteria should be consistent with our objective. So my objective is either I'm going to forecast for next month or 2 years. So if I'm going to forecast for next month, I should be utilizing that information in my model selection criteria. And so that's probably one of the most important point which I always try to stress. So before joining Wells Fargo, I did my thesis in forecasting, and before I was teaching, I still teach, but and in academic words, or usually not just also so once we have a model and we see, okay, let's forecast. But again, is the important point timing. So timing for both. So we have information which we call predictor. So that information should be available at the time when you need it. Again, it's back to the hurricane. So okay, we need in advance, not when it's happened. So same thing here, like non-farm payroll is the single most important variable and extremely difficult to forecast. So the reason is it's released in earlier part of the month. It's not too many information to predict that. And probably that's one reason is very important. The other hand, like later this week, index of leading indicator, supposedly the leading indicator, it will tell you where the US economy is going, and historically it has predicted all the recession. But it does not create that much volatility. The reason, like our accuracy, we always number one, because it's kind of middle of the month and people already know what's going on. So this information is not that useful. So same thing when we are trying to predict, predictor when we are trying to select, they should be available. It's very important because in my personal experience over almost 15 years, 99.99%, all the model, they're unrealistic because they will assume, okay, this information will available when we need it. It's not true because the data released with the lag, sometimes with 2 lag, sometimes with 1 month lag, and that's important. So here's this example I'd like to use still. Very first, here. So that's the Bloomberg consensus, that's our forecast, and that's the last month number. So if we go back in 2010, so now we all know, when the Great Recession ended. That was June 2009, right? But again, it's back to the information point. If we are, go back, invent a time machine, and just there. So at the time, in February 2010, we did not know when the recession ended. And many people were saying, okay, maybe in June, maybe in July, or some people, other extreme, we may be still in recession. And the major reason was, at this point, since December 2007 up to the Feb 2010, the labor market was producing negative numbers. And labor market is the key, one of the key areas. If people are not getting job, and how they will spend. Not only that, if they are at the fear of layoff, or they potentially they may lose job, they are not going to spend. And consumption is the 70% of the GDP. So if it's not that healthy, obviously economy is not growing. So a positive consensus number mean, okay, the labor market is in recovery shape. So that, we are out of the wood, but the actual number came in minus 20K. If you see, it's not much difference. It's 40K, and it's usually standard error roughly around 50K within one standard deviation. But the direction is important, and because of the negative. So the implication was the labor market still under stress. So that's why not just the magnitude, also the direction. And the other point here, we see our accuracy is 79% versus 67%. So if someone say, okay, the accuracy is 100%, I simply don't believe. Like again, in my last 15 years, I have met so many people. They say, okay, we predicted the Great Recession. I was at the time with the Wachovia, financial sector, was the epic, and we knew it's just not true. They were all claiming, and it's a lot easier to make all the, like if we see a recession in the next couple of years, people say I predicted that, but it's just making up, the story. So in real time, when you're trying to predict, it's just like, you have several different potential paths. Again, back to this hurricane, if you're watching, they will giving us a path. Okay, here's the 15% chance that may hit Charlotte. We are based in Charlotte. And that time I was planning to go to New York for another meeting. And before like Wednesday, New York was a potential, source. They say, okay, and that didn't happen. So same thing in forecasting is almost impossible to predict 100%. So it's like our accuracy on average 80%, Bloomberg 70%. So we are better than Bloomberg. There's a reason. I evaluate all my model, which for the short term I have 40 different models every year. So if the performance in terms of direction and in terms of forecast error is worse than Bloomberg, I will revise that model and I'll use that framework. So basically in forecasting, we build model, we forecast, we continuously revise, and they break down. And that's the fact. And then we revise. Should we revise all the time? No. So the other part is in forecasting, obviously we build model and then we need to know what's going on. Just a few months ago, we revised our non-farm payroll because Verizon strike. So because of Verizon strike, so we were expecting roughly 35 to 45,000 weaker payroll in July, and obviously in August they came back and we add that number into our forecast. So basically there are some temporary factor, and there's always something going on. We need to know what's going on. We try our best, and sometimes they say unknown. And sometimes non-unknown. So that's the other part of key to a successful forecasting. We call add factor. So basically, in spite of all these things, still I'd say probably 75-85% chance we will forecast, and we want to improve our number, our accuracy. Sometimes we get, very good, and sometimes not. And I always say, okay, I'm with Wells/Wachovia 10 years, so that means on average I'm not that bad, so I have still this job. But if I say, okay, I'm 100%, that's not true. If someone 100%, I don't believe either. So. And I always, at the end, before I tell you compliance is telling you basically we can change our mind, I share another final, I have 5 minutes? Yeah. So again, back in 2008, I was listening to Ben Bernanke. He was the chairman of Federal Reserve at the time. And he was giving a testimony to Congress, and he was asking $100 billion. And someone in the House asked, okay, now you came to us and you are asking $100 billion, and we give you, but what will happen if you come back and you say, I need more money? And he said, to be honest, so my people are very good in forecasting, but at the same time, we have so many errors. We may be wrong. If we were wrong, we need more money, we'll come back to you. And that's what happened. And the next time they came back asking for $780 billion. So, but we still, try, and I think that's my conclusion. Forecasting is an evolving process. We keep adjusting our sail according to the current. So if we have any question, comment, we'll more than happy to discuss.